Yes. All right, this is Alex Morris. I'm a student in Dr. Greg Wilson's class for oral history in the spring semester. The date is Wednesday, the 16th of April, 2014, and I'm here at Bierce Library with Richard Houck, and we are creating an oral history of his experiences in the rubber industry in Akron. So I'm just going to go ahead and clip this, if you wouldn't mind, if I just can just clip this on your shirt here. That way it'll pick you up. All right. So why don't you go ahead and tell me a little bit about yourself, where you were born, where you grew up.
I brought a map along with me that shows where I was born, where I lived, and that's Akron. So you know
right
that's
around.
right around Akron. Now this is where I live now.
In Manchester, near Manchester.
Yeah.
So you're born in Ravenna.
Yeah.
So when did you move to Akron? Did you ever live in Akron at any time, or?
Short time. My mom's side of the family was from Akron. Lived up off of Case Avenue, or South Street, not too far from South Street. You know, that's just that kind of southern border of the Akron U.
Right.
And actually, you can, if you're going on the Route 8, you can see the grandma's house.
Oh wow!
Right from Route 8. So they were real close here to Akron U.
Wow. So you said that your dad worked at Goodyear initially.
Yes, 37 years.
Okay.
He built earth mover tires. Unique thing. Back when he started, he was a union steward, but that was before they had unions. And he told the story about being a union steward. If he wore a hat all the time. If he took his hat off, everybody in the shop stopped working. If he put his hat back on, everybody started working again. So they meant to keep his hat on. It was kind of an interesting story. That was some pretty tough times. They had some. That was like in the 30s there, when they first had unions, and the company didn't want unions. Goodyear didn't want unions. So.
You mentioned the strikes in 1954. Can you tell me a little about that?
54. All I remember, I was only about 7 years old. I remember it was a long strike. Of course, we lived on a farm in Randolph. Basically here, this is where I went to school, and Randolph High School is that way on that road. So I got you kind of a basic idea of that. So the strikes in '54, very long strike, and they had some shorter strikes after that, and then what the company, as I remember, the companies, which would be Goodyear, Firestone, B.F. Goodrich, what the union would do is they would never strike. The final thing would be all would be struck. But what they would do is they would pick one company, like Goodyear, and work the other two. So what they were trying to do is they were trying to, the industry against each other, kind of work the companies against each other, because these two guys here are making money, this guy isn't making any money, you know what I mean?
Right.
So and they would pull out like all of Goodyear or all of Goodrich or all of Firestone, but not all of them. Only time they'd ever, and then once in a while they would do all three. If it got really bad, I guess that was what the thing. So the strike, there was a strike in '76 that I remember. Well, we had a couple short little things. But 76 was another long strike. And I was working at that time. And the strike, April 20th was April 20th? I think April 20th was the day we walked out, and then we didn't get back in until September something. And I said at that time I was also working on my degree. So I said, I was going to push to get my degree out of the way so I could, get on the other side, be management rather than be. Then if the strike came, I wouldn't have to go through it again.
Mm-hmm.
So
when did you actually start at Goodyear then?
in 1965.
And what did you do when you first started there? Like, tell me a little bit about.
Okay, I was apprentice. That spring, that was my senior year of high school. I was thinking, well, should I go to college? Should I go, And there was a whole lot of things. Back then, you could do just about anything. You could go to college. You could get a job pretty easily. This test came up. It was an apprentice test, and the high school principal, which was also the guy you went to if you're for discussion about what you were going to do, like a counselor. Yeah, he was also he had a hat. You hung it on one side of the thing, and he was the principal. On the other side of the thing, he was the counselor. So anyhow, you went to see him, and he says, well, he says there's this test that Goodyear gives, and we've had a couple people go there, and they had graduated from high school, and they kind of liked it. It wasn't too bad. So I thought, well, okay, I was taking tests. I figured practice test. It'd be good to. So I took the test, and lo and behold, I passed it, and they offered me a job. Then I had to make a decision. Do I go for the apprenticeship, which is what they offered? They offered you? They had electricians, polymer pipe fitters, and machinists, which was what I went, and they had tinners and various skilled trades. So I decided finally, I'll take it. I was going to be an apprentice at that time. So then it's a 4-year apprenticeship. So I worked as an apprentice for 4 years, which was from like 65 to 69, and then actually after that, then I became a journeyman. I worked actually till for 13 years as a apprentice and journeyman. So there was nine more years I worked and then I finished my degree. Okay, which was in 78. So it was 65, 78, and then they hired me on as an engineer, mechanical engineer. So then I was on the other end of the pencil. Right. That's what I say. Because on one side you're making the drawings, and the other side you're making the part that's made from the drawing. But anyhow, I went. Let's see. I went right into machine design, which was I had worked for them as an apprentice, and pretty good place to work. It was a pretty good place, really. I had pretty good time. Of course, now I was the guy that was making the drawings. I can remember my first drawing, and I got it done, and my section head, looks good, everything looks good. So we sent it down to the shop, and then it was weldment, okay, and so then your weldment's done. It's several weeks. Well, it takes time. Cut parts and weld it together. Anyhow, I got down there and it scared me. I couldn't believe it. What I'm saying? It was like like a 1/4 scale. But now it's full scale. They're in front of me. It was like as big as this table is what the weldment was. It was about the same size. It was part of a machine that we built. The first machine I worked on was what they called a hose winder. It like in your car, underneath the hood, the hoses that you fasten, some of those are what they call spiral hoses. It was made for like brake lines and automotive brake lines, or like big equipment that has hydraulic cylinders on it that they use. So that machine made hose. So that was one of my first jobs.
So what were some of the physical conditions? Like, were there any health concerns or safety concerns?
Well, I thought about that. Goodyear was well where I worked. I mean, if you did something wrong, if you made a mistake, it could be serious. It's like you got something big, you're working on something big, and say like you break a drill, pieces fly, and you could get seriously hurt. So that we all wore safety goggles, earplugs, and if it was a dusty thing, sometimes we cut material called like cast iron, and it was very dusty. Okay, so we wore a mask over our face, so we wouldn't inhale the dust. But
how about some of the relationships, like between workers and managers? How did that change when you were, on the one side, and then like seeing it from the other side? Did you notice any kind of the dynamic, or?
Oh, definitely it was different. It is different. I mean, although after the '76 strike, things had smoothed out quite a little bit, and I really don't think. I think we may have had maybe another strike, maybe two, but they were very short, and because the long strike, I mean, that just about it took a lot of funds. The union, you paid your union dues every month, and that built up what they call the strike fund. And when you delete your strike fund, then there's nothing. I mean, when you go out on strike, you're so that the tendency to go on strike is a lot lower if you don't have very very big strike fund. So.
What were some of the effects of the strike in '76 that you noticed, like among the workers? I mean, did most people support it, or?
Most people support. Well, as a union worker, if you don't support the strike, you probably ought to go look for another job. I mean, it's one of those things. That's your way of getting something done that you want. Getting some improvements. If you maybe better wages, which was what we got. Maybe another year, a week or two of vacation, depending on seniority. Those type of things is what you're striking for. Better health care, or differences in health care. There wasn't. Of course, on the other side, then you're kind of bald there. I mean, it's you and the management. I mean, and you don't have there's no protection there at all. I mean, if you screw up, you could be out on the street. I mean, and they could fire you just about at any time.
Right.
So
So would you say that, in general, they kind of accomplished what they wanted to with those?
I think so. I think so. And it wasn't the long strikes were. In fact, I'll tell you, the long strike, and this is the reason I got upset about it. The long strike, we could have had the same thing that we got for the end, and after about 4 weeks, they made the same offer. Or nearly the same offer. Within a few cents on the dollar, So here we are. We struck another several months and got very little or nothing for it. I got upset on that. So.
Between when you started, like through the 60s, did you notice any change, like from the civil rights movement or, women in the workplace?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Civil rights. We had, like a lot of our workers were Caucasian, and a few were black, and in 1972 they decided they were going to even up, try to do something to get our numbers up, to get the numbers more like it should be, like they should be. So they accepted several. They would accept several apprentice classes a year. Well, they'd accept one or two, all black, or all, they were all blacks, but basically, but they would accept one or two classes to bring themselves up, and it was like that was one thing I noticed. They were trying to be Goodyear. It was a pretty fair company. It was pretty fair. As far as working for a company to work for, it wasn't bad. It wasn't bad.
Some people have mentioned the Goodyear family idea and how they
absolutely,
and everything.
Absolutely. When I first started there, it did change. After towards the end, I noticed a big difference. I'd be working in the shop, and E.J. Thomas would be walk down through the shop. Of course, everybody knew he was E.J. Thomas is coming, but he could, how you doing? Actually, he knew several people. There was, how you doing, Eddie? It was quite a thing, actually. Now this is a company where he probably had, when I started out, there were 16,000 hourly workers and about 4,000 salaried workers. When I ended, there was about 2,000 hourly workers and about 10,000 salaried workers, which, but the walking down through the shop, it wasn't happening at that point. They didn't. Of course, they probably there was times when the time when I ended, most of the things were being done either someplace else in the country or at a non-union plant. Not so much at the union plants that were being shut down, and non-union plants were building non-union plants. So,
but for a while during that time period, it was
at the end, or
before, when you were at 70s, 70s, it was kind of a community.
Yep, it was like a family thing. And you kind of felt that way. Even though you were non-union, you were union.
Did you notice, with the Goodyear family idea, how workers, felt about that? Maybe felt about the changes that, kind of changed towards the end. That must have affected the dynamic of the workplace.
It definitely did. It definitely did. It wasn't nearly as secure, for one thing, for the hourly workers, because it seemed like every time you turned around there was somebody, well, we sold this off, we sold that off. They were selling things then. It was like to look good for stock price, they'd sell general products. That got sold. Aerospace got sold, and that went to Martin Marietta. Actually didn't to them, not first. There was another company. Martin Marietta got a second. But anyhow, so that the union was getting whittled away. Towards the end, if the union struck, Goodyear might not even notice it. I mean, there wasn't enough union workers actually to make a difference, to make much of a difference. They might not even notice it. That's what the thought I got. Boy, there just isn't anybody union. Nobody left. There were hourly workers, but they were non-union. So.
When did you see that kind of start to change? Like, what do you think caused that change?
The cause of it was probably two things. One was money. The second thing was they had decided that was one way. That was one way they could defeat the union. Just go to a non-union state like Lawton, Oklahoma. Oklahoma was a non-union state, or not what they called a right-to-work state. So you move in there, you build a new plant. It's non-union. They don't bother you, and then here, their old plant, shut that one down. We're going to build move all the equipment out to Lawton, Oklahoma, or someplace else, And so, in fact, Goodyear was a global company. I was thinking, they're in China and they're in Japan and India, Luxembourg, Europe, Debicha, which was Ukraine, I think. That's in the Ukraine. They're having a problem there now, but so that was the big. You knew it was coming, though. I mean, well, you kind of knew it was coming. At least at that time, I was on the management side of the thing. So I could, it seemed like every time you turned around, they were whittling away at the hourly workers, the hourly salaried workers.
So you mentioned trying to get away from the unions. So you think that was a big?
Oh, that was a big thing. That was a big thing. Yep.
What were some of the problems then that they were trying to solve by doing that?
Well, no strikes, no shutdowns. Nobody coming to your thing saying we got to have this and we got to have that. They gained more control of what they were wanting to do, which we're going to pay you this. Although most of the hourly non-union plants, the salaries were almost identical, to the union plants. I mean, if the union got a raise, the non-union plants got a raise too. So it was one of those things that they really didn't get rid of that, although they had more say over what was going on at a non-union plant. They had to with the union. If they made any worker changes or anything like that, it all had to be in the contract. So
they had more freedom to
do what they wanted to do. Plus, if they wanted to fire somebody, they were gone. I mean, I noticed that. I mean, of course, like I said, there wasn't anything done that wasn't, I should say it, necessary. I would think. You know, they just weren't that kind of company. That not vindictive, maybe, you know, that type of thing. And shoot, you're going to make a mistake down there, and it's not that you're, you know, everybody's just human. So that it's not that if you mess up once, they're going to nail you. It's you had to have been a pretty big mess up to get fired, I guess. Of course, in a union plant, that it was hard to fire somebody, very hard.
Let's see. How do you, when things started changing and they started, you know, moving the plants out of Akron, how do you think that affected Akron?
Oh shoot! A lot of good jobs gone. I mean, good jobs, good pay jobs. It was and all the companies shrank. I mean, like the Bridgestone, Bridgestone bought Firestone, and Michelin bought Goodrich, and General was bought by Continental. Well, General was near Goodyear, on the other side of Goodyear, and so consequently, it you know, Akron, the number of people in Akron, it went from like in the millions down to hundreds of thousands, maybe 400,000 or 500,000 people. It was all in Akron. It was like, well, kind of like what you're seeing in Cleveland. You know, there pieces of Akron were, you know, people just moved away. So it was pretty tough.
What are your some experiences, like, you know, that you noticed when they really started, like shrinking the companies?
Actually, you know, through all that, as I said, like I started as an apprentice, and then I seemed to have moved to the portion of the place where I was got chopped, and so I didn't do it by, you know, it was more like accident or luck, you know, because I moved here and then that they sold that part of the company, you know, and those people went away, you know, and so I really had a pretty good time. You know, every once in a while I go, but because, you know, it's like I was dodging the bullet, you know, because you know, the bullet. So that's, but basically, you knew what was happening, though. I mean, Akron physically was shrinking, and things weren't quite as good as what they used to be.
So what kind of changes did you see then? Because you retired in 2001, I think you told me.
Mm-hmm.
So through the 80s and 90s, you know, after the big strikes and everything, what kind of changes did you see at Goodyear, in Akron? Like, were there significant changes during that time period, or just kind of a gradual as they shifted things away?
More gradual, but definitely we were becoming more of we were becoming the how should I say it, the place where everything was run from, not main plant, the main or the center, no, what am I looking for? You know, like the hub of all the plants. Everything from here, we would go. You know, we would send like engineers. Engineers go to Lawton. Engineers go to Japan. Engineers go to China. But it was all done from here. One thing that I did notice is that competitors, they were constantly looking at the competitors, and the one that they used to use all the time was Cooper. Cooper has 7 engineers. Now Cooper is a little rubber company in Toledo or in that part of Ohio. So, but they have 7, and it's a little rubber company, but they only had seven engineers, and they kept saying, well, why do we have to have all these engineers? so they were starting to whittle away at engineering. That's when I left. There was 200 of us left at that time. But then most of those were salaried workers. 200. Of course, I left as. I had a pretty good time with it. I had a Goodyear retirement, and also they had invoked a 401k, and I could see that this was, the future didn't look too ripe. So I put as much money in my 401k as I could, because I told my wife, I said, we would, their day is coming when, my job's not going to be there anymore. And so it wasn't too long, and then that actually is what happened, because I could see it coming to the end. Of course, I was ready to go anyhow. I was 54. I was thinking about, I could have retired at 48. So I made it 6 years past, but that was pretty good too. Actually, they came and said, "We want you to go." We got the letter. They want you to go. We're going to give you 3 years on your service and 3 years on your age to boost your retirement. So my retirement was actually better than what I had. I only had 36 years in at that time. So, in that way, they were pretty good to me. That way it was pretty good. But still, I was out of a job. And if you staying around here, I didn't. So I just retired. I just used some money for my 401k, and I got to watch my daughter grow up. She was in high school at that time, so I got to watch her play sports, and she was. My wife is a teacher, phys ed teacher, and she also is a LD teacher too, learning disabled, and but she coached sports, so she coached my daughter in her sports, soccer, and then women's track. She really, in fact, that's what she's doing right now. She's out. They have a meet tonight.
So what do you think are the most important legacies that the tire industry left Akron, or the most important effects of the tire industry?
Well, I wrote down here the lessons. I wrote down change is a universal constant. Somewhere along the line, I picked that up because if whatever happens, you guarantee things will change. What it is one must change to manage his life. Manage your life. You got to be flexible. Got to bend and weave with the punches, I guess. actually, I think we don't have as many jobs here, but I wrote down here we became kind of a high tech area here. In this area, if you think about it, in fact, I've thought about it more than once. That just about any direction. Say you take a 100-mile radius and drive Akron at the center, and draw the circle around. You got Pittsburgh, you got Cleveland, you got Youngstown, and you can make or do or build or create just about anything you want. And I said it was kind of I called it a pre-Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley out in California?
Right.
Well, we were a pre-Silicon Valley. We started, actually, it came kind of the same way that the Silicon Valley did. It was about the same time. It's not, but we started that way beforehand. But you could, you see, I was also as an engineer. I did the Goodyear's robotics. We did robotics. We did electronics. Auto. That's cars or automotive. Chemicals, plastics. Do you know this thing that they're looking for, the airplane 370, the side, what you call it? That was developed at aerospace. Radar, and radar was developed at aerospace. Computers, computers. The first Goodyear Aerospace was building their own computers because they couldn't. What the problem with the early computers, to have a computer like it's on your desk, you would had to have a room about that big and heating and cooling of that whole area. Well, being that they were an aerospace industry, things had to be made smaller, so they had to develop their own chips and programming languages. Goodyear was a pretty powerful company. A forerunner of a lot of things. They we did the lunar landing, aerospace. I put in lunar landing. The tires that were on the little truck, the little thing they run around, those were Goodyear tires. We developed them right here. Metals. It's just unbelievable. This area has, I think it's a bad, this Rust Belt thing. Yeah, because we did everything out of steel, but it's not. I don't really think that we're not. How should I say it? We're down, but we're not out, I guess. That's the way I feel about it.
But there's still lots of potential.
Potential's there, but we always have had, this area has had a lot of potential.
Why do you think that is?
Ancestry. You've got Germans. My ancestors are German and Hungarian. You got the Hungarians. Well, look who who was the guy that he invented the telegraph? Oh boy, yeah, that was a Hungarian. Telsa.
Oh yes.
Tesla. Tesla is also with the AC DC. He was one that argued with the other guy in Ohio. lived out in the eastern side, the western side. What?
Edison?
Edison. Yeah. Edison wanted to make everything DC, but Tesla went out and got AC. Of course, the way it's worked out, it's better because you can do things with AC you can't do with DC. Although there is some drawbacks to the fact that AC has you can have interference with AC where you don't have the interference with DC. So, but neither, it's a balance.
Right.
Yeah.
So the German, Hungarian.
Well, German, Hungarian, Irish. The Irish. You got the Irish. You got. Well, and we also have our share of Chinese and other ethnic. We just have a whole bunch. We just that little guy walking around. I don't know. He may not be Chinese, but he's Eastern thing. Indians here. We've got. I don't know if you noticed that. A lot of Indians. Even going to Akron U. In fact, we had Persians here. Not from Iranians. So, but that it seems to have worked together, Mm-hmm. But it's we've had a pretty good luck with all our ethnicity.
Cool. Can you go back and maybe just talk about some of the different areas you worked at in Goodyear and some of the different things you did in those areas?
Well, like I said, the first thing I did, I was in industrial products. And industrial products were hoses, belts like V-belts, or belts that you find underneath, or the little belts, the wide, with the little groovies in it, and they call them multi-V belts. Flat belt. It's a flat belt with grooves in it, so it stays on. It runs on the pulley really nice. Hoses and we built our own rubber roofing machine. Now, Goodyear had they used to have a division that they called it pond liner. Okay, so what they would do is they'd say you got a head of pond, and it was in the area where you couldn't get it sealed. Say like you needed too much gravel or whatever. You take this pond liner and you put that down in the bottom. Then you lay maybe stone over top, just gravel or stone over top, and then you fill it with water. It was like a giant bathtub. Can you picture, or like a swimming pool with, the vinyl swimming pools, just like a giant swimming pool. Is the same idea. But so they took the idea of pond liner. They had put it on a roof in New Bedford, Massachusetts. It was a roof that, like say when the trucks back in to protect the stock and things. They added a little addition, and then they took this pond liner and they put it up there. And it had been up there for about 40 years. And some guy comes up and looks at it and says, we could make so they decided they were going to make roofing. So they come to us, and it wasn't just totally our idea. Firestone was doing the same thing. They come to us and they said, they gave us this. They said, here's a sheet of what we want. That's what we want. So this thing had a it was like two sheets together. So there was a seam here, and then it had scratchy marks that ran from all sides like this across it. So that meant that after they made the thing, they had drug it somewhere. So we had those. That's all we had. That's all we had. This and this thing. So we knew we had to make something that would stitch stitched the two pieces together. Then what we did is we made a machine that would lay down a sheet. Oh. It would lay down a sheet and then lay down another sheet, stitch the two together. Then it would take it over here and it would roll it up onto, we called it a mandrel. And it was a hollow mandrel, so when this was raw rubber. This is uncured, what we call uncured rubber. So that they rolled it up into a tube on a mandrel. And we put it in what we called a large, like a big pressure cooker. They called them autoclave. So you put that in there, and you put it up to a certain temperature for a certain time so that it cures the rubber all the way through. Now this is probably several hundred feet of this, what you call it. So then you unroll it, and you got rubber roofing. You got a sheet that's, say, it was, I think, like 20 feet wide and hundreds of feet long. So when you get up on the roof, you just roll it out, and they put ballast or weight on the top. And roll it up the side so that the water wouldn't leak. And we've got it all over the place. But they sold that business too. So eventually they sold that to Carlisle. But so that was well, you're the engineer. You got to fix the problems. We want to make this. But that was what they did. We sat down and so it was completely brand new. So we did our own machines.
Wow.
We also built all our own tire machines, because when people started in the rubber business, you didn't have a company that you could go to and say, I want to build tires. You had to make your own tire machine. So I also worked on tires, truck tires. I worked on earth mover tires. In fact, my dad built earth mover tires when he was a tire builder, and I used to go over and see him sometimes, watch him build tires. But earth mover tires, you know what I'm talking about?
Right.
You see them on those big trucks, the big trucks now.
Right.
Those were all. So you had earth mover tire machines. You had different tire machines. Were you make down to the smallest tire, which would be like on a wheelbarrow or something, or a lawnmower, and then all the way up to 12 foot. A man could stand at the center of the tire, or the open part of the tire. You could actually stand in there, 6 foot. So the
factory, how's it laid out then? Do they have different areas for all the different?
The factories are set up such that they're on a. Raw material comes in one side, finished material out that side. So in between here are processes to take the material from raw rubber and mix it. There's storage for the raw materials. Then there's mixing, and then they take and they make the parts into different shapes and different sheets. Actually make sheets of rubber to build the tires up out of. And then you have the tire building machines, which I worked on, and then output out this side. So you've got input, output. So we don't have enough output. So you make another one of those plants, same thing, input, output. What you do is you just keep, and So you need more output, you add another plant right beside the other one. You see what I'm saying? It's the same input output, and then the machinery just continued that way. So it's kind of it's a kind of a no-brainer kind of thing, but and I think you kind of see that at just about everywhere. Most automotive industry is that way too.
So if you could summarize your experiences, or just kind of, like, what do you think about your experiences at Goodyear?
I had a good experience. It was. I can say honestly, I met a lot of Goodyear. Let's see. Despite themselves, they hired some damn good people. No, they honestly did, and they met a lot of good people, and I had a very good, as far as a personal experience. It was they're fantastic to work there. It was fantastic to work there. We had we had installed a machine, and this is another side. We had installed a machine in Freeport, Illinois. The guy that built the machine retired, and so he retired before they got the machine installed. So they installed the machine. So that the guys that installed the machine, and lo and behold, they couldn't get the thing to run right. So my manager came to me and said, "Rick, we're going to go for a flight. We're going to go for a trip." So we got on the plane and flew to Freeport. Flew into Chicago, and then the Freeport, Illinois is like an hour and a half drive from Chicago. You couldn't ever fly in there. I mean, you had to drive part of the way. Anyhow, we get to Freeport, and we go into the plant, and then you get into the place where this machine was, and there the people were all, this is terrible. You just see it in the people faces. They were just fed up. I mean, the machine, it wasn't working right. I mean, it was supposed to make, just like this is a typical process in the plant. They make pieces of rubber, and they put two pieces together, and then take it over, and they roll it up on a roll. Then when they want to use it, they unroll it and use pieces of that to build their tires out of. Well, this thing, the parts were coming down. It wasn't straight, and it wasn't right, and so I sat there and I watched it for about a half hour, and I said, this wasn't too bad. It was, I could see. So I told my manager, I says, I asked the plant, give me a couple mechanics. I think I can fix this. So we went in, and it wasn't bad. It needed finessing, change the speed of this a little bit so that things worked a little more smoother. So I tweaked it on that a little bit, and I changed a couple sprockets. And pretty soon the machine started, and the parts started coming out, and you could just see the workers. They were going, this thing is working. but the guy that installed the machine, there was a table down on the end, and instead of he thought that the table was square. I know that what happened. but the table wasn't square, it was rectangular, slightly. So what happened was, all of a sudden, he could see that that part wasn't necessary. So what he did is we called it a flame wrench, but he got a torch out and he cut that part off. I mean, he just cut it off. And so once we got it, the machine was running now. But if you ran a certain part of stock, that it would always overhang that edge of the machine. It needed that. What happened was he installed the table this way instead of that way. And so I said, "Hey, you get that?" Well, luckily they still had the part there. So what they had to do is put that back on and weld it back on. And then then the machine was then okay. But it was, the only thing was the guy installed the machine wrong. in about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, this thing went from damn to it's the best thing since sliced bread. You know, it was great. It was the best day I ever had in my life. It was just like, and the people in the plant, they were all, wow. It was, when you can fix things like that, fix something like that they and they appreciated it. They just thought that was the best. You couldn't have wanted anything better than that.
So, is there anything else you want to add about the rubber industry or Goodyear or your experience, or any other thoughts that you had?
The rubber industry is shrinking. I wrote this down. Now, at least as far as the United States is concerned, but it's either you're having more players: Chinese, the Indians, the Japanese. There's plants in Africa and Italy. Italy is another rubber manufacturers. And what's happening is like, say, like Bridgestone has bought up Firestone. They bought up Firestone. We bought up Dunlop. See, I had Bridgestone one, and then we bought up Toyo, which is Japanese. We bought up here's Michelin, and they bought up Goodrich, and Bridgestone bought up Firestone. Continental bought up General. So what's happening is and they did. Back when I was an apprentice, they said that the trend for the industry is that this is what they told us as an apprentice. We had this personal economics thing, and the vice president of the company came in and talked to us, and he said, this is back in '65. Now this is my period of work was through the '90s into 2001. So, but this guy is saying that the industry is looking like it's going to compress. I mean, there at that time there was all these companies, and he says in 1970s we're going to be down to three big companies. So what do we have right now? Michelin, Goodyear, probably Continental. Well, and there is Cooper, but three big companies. And that it's all been either bought up or people have gone out of business. Is so that it's just a trend that is happening. That's all there is to it. And but what I thought was so neat. Here I was in 1965 when they told us that. How did the guy know? what was going to happen in the 80s and the 90s, you know, that whoever, you know, back then they used to, what is it, like foretelling the future. They, this was a neat one. They also told us that in 1970, which was 5 years away, that we were going to have a downturn, economic downturn, and it's going to be rough a little bit, but you get better towards the end of 70. And sure enough, in 1970, the economy tanked out, and then it started back up, just like he foretold. Now, what it is they can't, you know, what it is projections of business, that whoever's doing it was doing one heck of a job, because he could see they were actually like foretelling the future, which I thought, how? Somebody knows more than I do about it. But the deal was and to be so accurate, you know. So it in the end, I think I always when I started in the business, I thought by the time I finished up, we'd be doing like jets. Yeah, I don't know if did you ever see the show Jetsons? You know, where they're flying around. You don't need tires when you're flying around like that. I thought we would be in the Jetson age. Still we're still on tires. So it's the only letdown that I had is that we haven't made it well, but we are getting closer. We are getting closer. You see, some of these guys got those cars that fly. You know, you see that now. You didn't see that. The guy in there was a guy in California had a four-wheeled vehicle that flew, but that was the thing that it just hasn't happened yet. I mean, it's not totally happened, and I don't know. You probably see some of these what they call those the little robots, you know, with the four propellers that go, you know, the lifters and things. Mm-hmm. Well, that could be a way of traveling around too. I mean, you might not go, 30,000 feet in the air, but that could be. But you won't need tires. But that was the thing that disappointed me. So I always thought we were going to work ourselves out of a job.
Wow.
You know.
Well, I want to thank you for your time.
I don't know where are we at on time? It's past 3 o'clock, isn't it?
It's actually almost 4, so.
I bet I got a ticket.
I hope not.
It's on the road down here.
Yeah. So I should probably let you go before that.